Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel English with Bhavani. Today we are going to read a very interesting lesson, On the Face of It by Susan Hill. Scene 1. 14-year-old Derry slowly enters a garden assuming that it is empty. Suddenly he is startled by Mr. Lamb telling him to watch out for fallen crab apples. Derry nearly leaves in panic, but Mr. Lamb engages him in conversation and tells him that he has no reason to be afraid. Derry retorts that it is others who are afraid of him. Mr. Lamb suddenly starts talking about picking crab apples to make jelly and asks Derry to help him. Derry gets angry. He thinks that Mr. Lamb is changing the topic, like most people, to hide his discomfort on seeing Derry's disfigured face. One side of his face had been burned by acid. Mr. Lamb tries to pacify Derry by pointing out his wheat garden. He believes that there is beauty in everything. Mr. Lamb further tells Derry about his tin leg and how children teases him and call him Lemmy Lamb. Instead of focusing on what others think, Derry should appreciate the good things around him. Derry remains skeptical. He is tired of people telling him to be thankful and that he is better off than others. He complains that no one would ever love him, even his own mother only kisses him because she has to. He recounts how he once overheard two women whispering how ugly his face was. Mr. Lamb tells him to observe the beauty of the world and suggests that Daddy should think positively. For instance, some find the buzzing of bees irritating, but to Mr. Lamb's ears it is music. When Derry says how he hates being around people, Mr. Lamb tells him how even locking himself up in a room will not help. Once a man did just that because he was afraid of everything. Ultimately, he died when a picture inside the house fell on his head. Derry now cheers up a little and asks Mr. Lamb how he spends time. Mr. Lamb remarks he loves to sit in the sun and read books. He loves the light and so does not have curtains in his house. Derry then recalls his family discussing his deformity and their concern for his future. Mr. Lamb chides him gently, asking him to focus on his ability rather than negativity. Derry asks Mr. Lamb if he has any friends, and Mr. Lamb declares that he considers everyone a friend, even Derry. Derry wonders how one could be friends with a stranger. When he remarks how he hates some people, Mr. Lamb warns him how hateful thoughts are far more corrosive than any acid. Derry remembers how someone had remarked that Derry was better off in a hospital with other disfigured people. He wonders if that would indeed have better, at least one would not love him. Mr. Lamb disagrees, remarking how even things that appear the same are intrinsically different. Mr. Lamb invites Derry to visit the garden anytime, but Derry fears that others would run away on seeing him. Mr. Lamb tells Derry not to mind that, as he does not mind the children who shout Lemmy Lamb but still come to his garden. Derry's attention now turns to the crab apple tree. He worries that Mr. Lamb could hurt himself badly trying to pick the fruits. He wants to help but needs to inform his mother about his whereabouts. He fears his mother will stop him, but Mr. Lamb tells him that it is up to him alone to decide whether he come back or not. Derry flares up again, accusing Mr. Lamb of being scared of him like everyone. Mr. Lamb ignores this. Mr. Lamb walks towards his beehive. Derry calms down and runs off, promising to be back. However, Mr. Lamb does not think he would. Scene number 2. Derry's mother tries to stop Derry from returning as she had heard strange rumors about Mr. Lamb. But Derry wants to learn from Mr. Lamb's perspective and runs off. He is convinced that it is an opportunity to break free. and unless he uses it, he would never be able to go anywhere. Scene 3. Mr. Lamb is standing on a ladder picking apples. Suddenly, he and the ladder come crashing down. A moment later, Derry enters the garden shouting that he is back. Seeing Mr. Lamb lying motionless on the ground, he runs to Mr. Lamb. He realizes he is too late and starts crying, saying that he did come back. Thank you. Please subscribe the channel.